Smooth 98.1, love music, love life. This is Freshly Pressed. We're looking at the news stories making the headlines across the country. We have the analysts in, and as always, would love for you to be a part of the conversation. The WhatsApp number is 0809 440 981. You can also tweet at Smooth981. And we are streaming live on YouTube. You can catch that live stream. It's up on our YouTube. It's Smooth981. And you can also post a comment on there. The analyst this morning, Mr. C and Gbubemi, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Zibby. Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Mr. C.
Good morning, Zibby. Good morning, Gbubemi. Good morning, Lagos.
All right, let's get into it. Our first headline comes from Vanguard. Labour gives federal government a May 31 deadline on minimum wage.
Okay, thank you, Zibby. So yesterday was May 1st, and traditionally it's International Workers' Day. And in Nigeria, we had some sort of celebration or marking of the day. And we were informed by statements from the federal government that workers on a defined benefit structure had gotten increases in salaries ranging between 25% to 35%. Now, this didn't go down well with Labour because Labour insists that there hasn't been a review of the national minimum wage. Now, it's instructive to note that the last review was done in 2011. Now, this review should have been completed before the 1st of May. The federal government had set up a committee to review this. It was a 37-man committee, and at the time, I, alongside other interested people, had wondered about the numbers of people in that committee. Now, interestingly enough, they were unable to come up with a final figure. This is the 2nd of May. And Labour is saying, look, we've done a review. We've looked at everything in totality. And we believe that 615,000 naira is the minimum wage you can pay any worker in Nigeria per month in today's reality. Now, I've gone through the breakdown, and by the time you split money between food, accommodation, and power, you're easily touching 300,000, 400,000 before you even include healthcare, you include transportation to work and back. However, this is the point. While 615,000 may look all right when you do the computation and you take in the necessary factors, in today's Nigeria, in our current economic realities, 615,000 naira sadly will not fly. Nobody can pay that amount. Even the richest state governments, e.g. Lagos, Delta, Rivers, Kano, they simply cannot afford to pay the least paid workers 615,000. Now, Labour has given the federal government a May 31st deadline to sort out this minimum wage review. Now, Labour is at 615. Where should the federal government come in from? Where should the state governments come in from? Because when you think about it, the current minimum wage or the previous, still the current minimum wage, it's 30,000 naira. States, we saw a number of states struggle to pay 30,000 naira. In fact, 24 states in the federation will not be able to pay salaries if they do not receive monthly allocations from the federal treasury. So where are we with this? Where are we headed to? Looks like come May 31st, we're heading towards another strike, which is really sad. Now, the reality on the ground is this. From one perspective, there's no money. From another perspective, we hear incredulous and absurd tales of public officials, past and present, being involved in the theft or misappropriation of mind-boggling sums of money. Remember the allegations that came out from the humanitarian ministry. A minister was suspended. We were told investigations had started. Silence. A former state governor who has been declared wanted by the EFCC is accused of stealing at least 80 billion naira. And guess what? That particular state is one of the states that truly struggled to pay 30,000 naira and was unable to do it consistently. So as a nation, we need to decide what we're doing. Do we want to go the US route and start paying per hour? Maybe that is easier for everyone. Because when you move it to the private sector, I don't know any private sector that can afford to pay the least paid workers 615,000, including the multinationals in the oil and gas space, in the food consumer manufacturing space. I simply don't know any. So these are interesting times. Let's hope that cool heads prevail and we can get to some sort of workable salary that will be achievable on both sides, both government and the private sector, and which labor will accept in the interim.
All right, thanks, Mr. C, for that. Abimbola, I think that message, you sent that to a wrong number. All right, let's go on to the next headline, and this one comes from This Day. Presidency, 36 states, private sector sign accord to transform Nigeria into $1 trillion economy by 2030. Gbubemi?
Okay, so at an event which happened yesterday, the technical advisor to the president on financial inclusion, Dr. Zauro, issued a communique which has been termed the ASO Accord. And this ASO Accord is termed a core pillar of the president's renewed hope agenda, with the intention of transforming the country into a $1 trillion economy by the next 6 years, 2030. It aims to combat poverty and insecurity through broad-based prosperity. The key thing about this accord is that it involves all of the government organs of the government, so all of the executive arms of the state and national government, so the presidency, the 36 states governors, and also representatives of the private sector. Now, their intention is to be able to push policies, put in place programs and activities which they believe will enhance financial inclusion, reduce poverty, address insecurity, and also target people who are in, should I say, underserved or segments or vulnerable groups, such as women, youth, rural communities, and small businesses. Okay, so nice initiative, nice plans, nice intentions, but my challenge often is that we've probably seen a version of this, at several times through previous governments, and, nothing has really come out of these things. A lot of times it seems as though we talk shop a lot. We know how to put together these events, sign these communiques, write policies or whatever, but we're always poor on the execution side. So, which is my challenge, I'm not quite sure what level of intention or that these people have towards executing this ASO Accord. I'd like to stay positive to believe that there will be a lot of executive might, and also that there will be cooperation from the private sector, which is already signed on anyway, to be able to support whatever these plans are. But many times I often think, that our problems, whilst they may seem so large and so severe, have easy solutions, things that you can easily address if you're serious about addressing these things. So one of the things that Mr. C had talked about just now was corruption in government, and how there seems to be a lot of money that's wasting, money that's designed for specific activities, but then it goes into other quarters, and then retrieving these funds always seems to be a Herculean task. So for me, that's one of the things. So this is money that could have gone into actual programs that can benefit all these underserved segments that have been identified. So I'd rather also, well, like I said, this is a nice accord. I'd rather also that the government also focuses on addressing core issues within its sphere of influence, such as ensuring, that when contractors are paid for jobs, they execute properly. There's a proper tracking process for payments and all of that. Even at the state government level, that the state governors themselves also address these issues with a high level of seriousness as well. So if we plug government wastage, for example, we probably will not need to be signing these kind of accords, because the money that has been set aside for various projects would be spent on what it's spent on, and the people who need to benefit from these projects would benefit from them. Insecurity is also another thing that they've also addressed. I'm aware that government also has, done a lot when it comes to insecurity, But I believe also, and I'd said this at some point in time before, that I don't think that there's been a lot of local involvement in the communities with citizens as well, because people who we call bandits or terrorists, exist within communities or relate within communities. People know them, and they're most likely coexisting with some people who are supporting them as well. So how do we also ensure that these people are fished out and face the full extent of the law? So just in conclusion, yes, nice accord and all of that, but I think that there are a lot of other small wins that can go into addressing these things and getting the outcomes that they seek to get.
So I just want to quickly throw this in. We've always wondered how these terrorists operate with impunity. Now, if you were to go to the social media platform TikTok, they're all over the place shooting videos, dancing, displaying their weapons, their ammunition. It's truly mind-boggling. And it beats the imagination because one, they need a smartphone, they need access to the internet. So how are they paying for the internet? How are they getting internet services? So the security agencies, are you still doing everything you ought to be doing to get these guys? Because for someone in the forest to have access to social media, it's truly interesting.
All right, let's look at some of the messages that we have coming through. This one is from Adigboyega Adediji, and he says, Labor under Joe Ajaero's dead. It's been relegated to the soil. Their demands are unrealistic and pathetic. Joe Ajaero has not shown quality of a true leader in making a change. He would have consolidated his emergence as Labour president with a strike. Immediately, he became the Labour president, but he chose to trade the emotions of the people at the roundtable talk with the federal government, and this is why he is not respected. Angel said, Labour's proposed figure for minimum wage is merely a negotiating strategy. Aim for the sun. If you don't reach it, you'd at least land on the stars. Even I do this when charging clients. Ibukun from Ketu says, well said, Mr. C. The civil servants also see how much is paid to politicians as salaries, allowances, prayers, and travel expenses. Although Labour's demands may not be realistic, they know how many times the salaries and allowances of politicians have been increased since 2011, not to mention the SUVs and all. So it's a hard sell for the government to say there is no money. There has to be a shedding of what is paid to political office holders to the civil service. All right, Bukun, thank you for that. Let's go on to the next headline. From Punch, go after Phil Herders, reps tell security agencies.
Okay, thank you, Zibby. So the co-chair of the House Committee on Petroleum Resources Downstream, Mr. Ikenga Ugo Chinyere, was speaking yesterday, addressing the media, and he was tasking the security agencies with going after fuel holders and people who are trying to sabotage this administration, especially with regards to the distribution and supply of petrol. Now, the first challenge I have with that request is, why do our security agencies why do they need to be told what to do? It's their job. It's what they've been paid for. It's what they've been doing for the longest time possible. So why do we need to ask or urge the security agencies to go after fuel holders? Anytime there's a fuel scarcity, especially in Lagos, Abuja, you find people right in front of a petrol station with kegs of all different sizes offering petrol to you at ridiculous prices. We can't say we don't know who these guys are. We can't say we do not know how they get the petrol. They get the petrol from the same petrol station that motorists have parked and queued up and are waiting to buy petrol. He then says that, oh, we have 1.5 billion liters of petrol in Nigeria that can last 30 days. Now, this is an old wise fable that has been carried on for the longest time possible. My question to the authorities is, you have 1.5 billion liters. Where is it stored? This is not something you conjure in the air and leave it in the air. 1.5 billion liters has to be stored somewhere. It has to be stored in tanks. Where are these tanks located? Are they in Lagos? Are they in Port Harcourt? Are they in Abuja? Are they in other parts of the country? Now, if you had 1.5 billion liters, why do we have this perennial craze and unhinged struggle to get petrol? We then hear another ridiculous story that there are no vessels, smaller vessels, to pick up the petrol from the mother vessels that are just docked outside our waters. This again is ridiculous. How have we been doing it previously? So where are the vessels that were previously transporting or transshipping petrol from the mother vessels into Nigeria? Where are they? Did they all travel? Are they all bad? Then Interestingly, we hear something from the Petroleum Distributors Association, the transport distribution arm, that they are being owed bridging claims of, I think, 200 billion naira. Now, this accords more with common sense and reasoning. If they're being owed money and they're now threatening to go on a strike, what then is the response to the NNPC? Because since last week, we've been hearing, oh, this is a minor hiccup. It will be solved within 2 to 3 days. It's been more than a week now. Mr. Ikenga repeated again yesterday, it's 2 to 3 days. Well, fingers crossed. Let's see what the federal government and the political elites mean by 2 to 3 days, because certainly it cannot be calendar days.
All right, thanks for that, Mr. C. Let's look at a few messages. Tayo says, I didn't know we needed to sign an ASO Accord to kickstart the economy. Talk about hosting an event, renting halls, buying refreshments, and whatnot. I wonder how many treaties the government needs to sign before getting down to business and work. And terrorist by day and TikToker on off days. Adopsy says on the first story, there is enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. And he quotes the late Bola Ige. All right, and you're still listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. Stay with us. The conversation continues shortly.
My name is Praise, and if you like good music, stay tuned to Smooth 98.1. Our orchestra. Watching you move, it's like listening to a symphony of body parts directed by a maestro. When you walk, it is like watching a G clef stroll across an octave centered by a C sharp. When you talk, the cadence of your voice is a tenor saxophone, making love to a cello at the perfect pitch. You are so smooth. That's why we keep it here on 98.1. This is Justin Eden, signing out. This is Johnny Drill, and you're listening to Smell for Breakfast.
It's Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. We're looking at the news stories across the headlines. We've got Mr. C and Gbubemi as the analyst this morning. Please let us know your thoughts. The WhatsApp number to send your messages to is 0809 444 0981. And you can also catch the live stream up on our YouTube channel. It's Smooth 981. From The Nation, property owners on Lagos Calabar Road to get 2.75 billion naira compensation.
Okay, so the federal government has begun the construction of the Lagos Calabar Coastal Highway, starting from the Atlantic Point at the end of Ahmadu Bello Way in VI. And to be able to achieve that, they had earlier said that the coastal road would pass just at the beach and would affect a lot of property that was on the beach. And they had issued some notices to these people. Notably Landmark. Landmark has a beach and like a resort facility just at the beach. And Landmark had complained that this coastal highway project would affect its existing structures because they need to be demolished and all of that. Anyway, this week we saw videos of the beach being cleared, the beachway access. I'm not sure it affects the building actually, but all of the property at the back, and then some other beach clubs as well on that road are already currently being demolished. Well, I quite have some thoughts about this project. One of the things is that we just woke up one day and found out that a coastal highway project was going to be built. Yeah, quite all right. We knew there was going to be a coastal highway, but it seems as if, you know, it was just awarded overnight and then work started almost immediately, which is commendable for any Nigerian government. You know, but I keep on wondering, okay, Landmark had argued that the original right of way was further in front of it, passing along the Water Corporation Drive, and that the government could still explore that rather than choosing to go through the beach. I'm not quite sure, you know, what the original plan was, but my thoughts are, was an environmental impact assessment conducted along that right of way? One, realizing that there were already existing structures on that part, was an economic assessment also conducted? to determine whether it would profit the government to build the road there or to move the road elsewhere. You know, I'm just asking these questions reactive because I'm not quite sure these things happened. We haven't seen any record of that. Now they've gone ahead and said they've started paying compensation to some of the people that have been affected, and they would also pay compensation to some of the other people. You know, it just surprises me that, you know, if we look around, you know, most parts of the world, especially places that are tourist destinations, they harness a lot of benefits from economic benefits from their beach assets. You know, now we're choosing to build a highway across our beach assets. So, and that's prime property. I can imagine how much Landmark was making from that property. I can imagine how much they were remitting in various taxes, both at state and federal level. And these are inflows, you know, that are practically going to be gone or reduced at significant levels because we're building a highway. And why are we building a highway across a prime beach property? It really doesn't make an economic sense to me. But anyway, you know, like I said, again, these are reflective thoughts and it's not going to change what's been done already. I'm not quite sure how this will be managed. Actually, I do know how this will be managed. You know, Coastal Highway will continue to be built and nothing is going to affect them. So compensation, you know, is what we're talking about. And they've said that they've already started paying some of the people that are affected. I'm wondering how they're computing the cost for compensation, you know, and for those who have not been paid, when they will be paid. You know, these are considerations that should be thought about. But then again, we also need to think about the impact of job losses as well, because these facilities hired people, provided employment for a lot of people. And potentially, you know, they're going to either have to let go of all of their staff or reduce their staff numbers to a significant number because the prime attraction that they were offering visitors, you know, is gone. There's no beach there anymore. You know, so I really don't know what to make of this project. That's just it at the end of the day. I really don't know.
Okay, so let me quickly jump in on this. I agree with everything Gbubemi has said, and I can confirm that as we speak now, there's no environmental impact assessment report. So it is seemingly clear now that no exemption was granted by the Ministry of Environment. We were treated to a most ridiculous response from a sitting public official when he was being asked a question as to the existence of an environmental impact assessment report. His response was truly disappointing. I found it so disappointing, I'm not going to repeat it here. Now, the bigger question is this. You have the East-West Road. You haven't completed it. There doesn't seem to be any desire to finally complete the road. You've embarked on this project, even in the absence of the necessary and statutory reports. Now, look at the rehabilitation of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. It's taken the greater part of, 15 years? It's still not completed. What is the guarantee that in 8 years' time, when this administration hopefully gets a second term and it finishes, this project will be anywhere near 40% or 50% complete? It's not looking bright. Now, the minister says we started paying compensation. Paying compensation to who? Is it the property owners in Lagos? Because there is no evidence publicly available that property owners in the other states where this proposed coastal road will pass through have been settled or been approached. Also, there's no material publicly available to show that the other state governments have signed on to this project. So there's a lot of mystery around this project. I do not understand what the haste and acceleration is about, given the fact that you're going to continue tolling the road. There are other roads in Nigeria spread across the different geopolitical regions that need to be fixed. But we'll watch and see.
All right, let's look at the messages. Emeka says the Labour chairman is too weak for my liking. He should sit up and imitate Adams Ashomole era if he truly means good for Nigerian workers. Anthony says there's this saying, aim at the sky so you can at least get to the treetop when you jump. That's probably the principle Labour is implementing right now because we all know 615,000 is never feasible. As for the government hoping to transform into a $1 trillion economy, can someone please tell them that God started creation with light as an example of humanity? Nothing will and can ever happen unless the issue of power is sorted. 80% of the nation's problem is solved when this problem is tackled. A 1 million trillion economy remains a mirage without power. And that message is from Tony. Adopsy says, as for the NNPC, government parastatals have a culture of lying because there are no consequences for incompetence and ineptitude, and it goes all the way to the top. That's why no one is held accountable and no one to report to. Aisha says, this coastal road that the government is trying to build, how is it a priority at this time? Demolishing properties and businesses at this critical strenuous time in all Nigerian lives. What about the environmental impact assessment and implementing the project, or the impact and implications of those that will be displaced along the proposed route? Please, would it not be more strategic to construct a rail line connecting those states, which will be more economically viable? And Lion King says, why privatize a beach that should be open or accessible to all and sundry in the first place? Okay, let's go on to the next headline, and this one comes from Punch. Flooding. Anambra begins drainage desilting, vows to punish offenders.
Okay, so Anambra is prone to floods. It's along the floodplains, and every year, you know, especially now that with global warming, rainfall levels have really increased. You know, there's a potential that it's going to be seriously flooded this year. So what they've said is that they started desilting clogged water channels to be able to ensure that at least within the commercial areas, the city urban areas, you know, they're able to channel drainage water out of the place and reduce the effects of flooding. I know also that they are also prone to erosion, you know, which is also an outcome of flooding. So these plans are also aimed at, you know, reducing that. You know, was it a few weeks ago, we took a story about Abia State also focusing on their environmental efforts. So this is also somewhat akin to that, because they appear to also be focusing on improving their environmental practices across the state. Now, not just within the urban areas as well, but also within the farmlands and the rural areas as well, because they've also, you know, they've also had flooding in those areas, which has affected agriculture and farming practices and all of that. So essentially, this is just a preventative measure for them. But I wonder, you know, we're already in the rainy season, you know, it's sort of like they'll be playing catch up to be able to prepare for that. You know, I know that the rains have already started, especially within those areas. So I hope that they're able to achieve something to be able to at least minimize the impacts of floods if we do have such heavy rains this year.
All right, next headline comes from The Guardian. Northern governors pledge to curb population growth, social vices in region.
Thank you, Zibby. So the same northern governors have come up again with another stunt, and I call it a stunt, and I'll explain why. The other week, they were all in the United States to discuss insecurity in Nigeria, which is truly ridiculous. Now, they gathered themselves at a forum and they've come out with the high-sounding statements, and I'll read them as follows. They've pledged to redress the high population growth as well as social and economic problems plaguing the region over the years. They've also said that they've also commended the federal government for demonstrating total commitment to winning the war against terrorism, kidnapping, and other forms of criminality, and that they are committed to ensuring that they address climate change and sustainable agricultural practices and population growth, which pose significant challenges to the region. All these are high-sounding words. There's no substance or detail to what they've said. They've resolved to adopt a holistic approach that will promote environmental conservation, sustainable agriculture, and responsible resource management to safeguard the lives and livelihoods of people and preserve the national heritage of generations unborn. Please, what is all of this? You gathered yourselves together. You know the problems plaguing your region. You know the problems plaguing each of your states. The first thing you need to address is the economic climate. They do not have sufficient numbers of people engaging in proper economic activity that will drive the respective economies of the state in the north. Now, when you do not address that, when you don't address the fact that a good number of your children are out of school, are not interested in education, and the few that have managed to find themselves in education consistently post very poor and abysmal results in federal examinations, it begs the question, what are you guys talking about? How do you intend to achieve all these noble and high-sounding intentions that you've clearly articulated? Well, I'm not impressed with the northern governors. This for me is a complete waste of time, and you will be judged by the results and not the statements you release.
All right, thanks for that, Mr. C. Let's move on to the messages. Bukola says, good morning. The first question, is this a priority for Nigeria at the moment? We have our power sector in shambles, which will enable the real economy, increase inflow of export revenue. Please, may we know what the expected revenue for this coastal line is and why is there such an urgency to this project? Angel says, your analyst is spot on regarding the coastal road project is shrouded in opacity, which makes it flawed. Makes me wonder if it's not a ploy to embezzle government funds. Imande says the Lagos to Calabar highway project is already mired in unending controversies. Can we just get one thing right in this country? Damilola says the federal government has right of way 250 meters inwards from the coastline. The federal government doesn't need any state government's permission. All right, well, that is all the time that we have for Freshly Pressed this morning. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your messages. And of course, special thanks to our analysts for being here, Mr. C and Gbubemi.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Do stay with us. There is a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast.